My brother's wife doesn't know I'm the real father. It happened 4 years ago at Greg's birthday party. He was turning 28 and his girlfriend Amy threw him this huge thing at their apartment. I showed up late because work ran over. Greg was already drunk when I got there, passed out on the couch by 10 p.m. Amy was pissed. She'd spent all day cooking and decorating, and he couldn't even stay awake for his own party. I helped her clean up after everyone left. We were in the kitchen loading the dishwasher, and she just started crying about how Greg never appreciated anything she did. One thing led to another. We hooked up in their guest room while my brother was snoring 3 rooms away. We both agreed it was a huge mistake. Never spoke about it again. I avoided family dinners for a month. Then Amy announced she was pregnant. Greg was so excited he called me at 6 a.m. to tell me he was going to be a dad. I did the math in my head. The timing matched up exactly with that night, but I kept my mouth shut. They got married 2 months later at the courthouse. Greg kept saying how he couldn't wait to meet his son. Amy wouldn't look at me during the whole ceremony. Their kid Owen turned 4 last month. And here's the thing. Owen looks exactly like me. Same red hair, same green eyes, same weird crooked smile. Greg has brown hair and brown eyes. Amy has blonde hair and blue eyes. Greg's whole family has dark features. People started commenting on it when Owen turned 2. Greg's mom kept saying how strange it was that Owen didn't look like either of them. Greg would just laugh and say genetics are weird. He'd mention some great uncle who supposedly had red hair. Last week, Greg texted me asking if I could donate blood for some family medical history thing their doctor wanted. They were doing genetic testing because Owen has some weird allergy condition and the doctor wanted to rule out hereditary stuff. I said I was too busy with work. Greg got annoyed and said it would take 20 minutes. I made up an excuse about being afraid of needles. He called me a baby and said he'd ask our cousin instead. Then yesterday, Amy showed up at my apartment. No text, no warning. Just knocked on my door at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. She said they went ahead with the genetic testing using Greg's blood. The results came back today. Owen's DNA doesn't match Greg's markers for the allergy screening. The doctor told them that sometimes tests need both parents and close relatives to be thorough. Amy looked me dead in the eye and said the doctor suggested testing other family members, starting with me since I'm the closest male relative. I asked her what she wanted me to say. She said she needed to know if I remembered that night 4 years ago. I heard Greg's truck pull into the parking lot downstairs. Amy's voice dropped to a whisper. She said Greg already knew. He'd known for 6 months. He'd done a secret paternity test after his mom kept making comments about Owen's appearance. The results came back negative, but Greg hadn't said anything to Amy because he loved Owen too much to blow up their family. Amy only found out yesterday when she discovered the test results hidden in Greg's desk. Now Greg was here because Amy had left those same results on my kitchen counter this morning when she'd stopped by earlier. The sound of his truck door slamming echoed through my apartment window. Heavy footsteps on the metal stairs outside. Then, 3 hard knocks on my door. I looked at Amy. Her face had gone pale. She was shaking. "Open it," she whispered. "We have to do this now." My hand felt like it weighed 100 pounds as I reached for the doorknob. The metal was cold against my palm. I turned it slowly. Greg stood in the doorway. He looked different somehow. Older. His jaw was tight and his eyes were red like he'd been crying or drinking or both. He was holding a manila envelope in his right hand. The same envelope I'd seen on my kitchen counter that morning but hadn't bothered to open because I assumed it was junk mail from my landlord. "You knew," Greg said. His voice was flat, dead. It wasn't even a question. Amy moved to stand beside me. "Greg," she started. "Let me explain." He held up his hand. "Not you. I already know what you did. I want to hear it from him." I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up completely. 4 years of guilt and secrets and pretending everything was fine. 4 years of watching my nephew grow up knowing he might be my son. 4 years of lying to my brother's face at every family gathering. Greg stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The click of the latch sounded like a gunshot in the silence. "Say it," he said. "I need to hear you say it." I swallowed hard. "Greg, I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. That's not what I asked." He moved closer. His hands were shaking now too. "Say the words." I looked at Amy. She had tears streaming down her face. Then I looked at my brother, the person I'd grown up with. The person who used to sneak me candy when our parents weren't looking. The person who taught me how to ride a bike and throw a football. The person whose trust I'd destroyed in one stupid drunk night. "Owen might be mine," I said. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. Greg's face crumpled. For a second, I thought he was going to cry. Then his expression hardened into something I'd never seen before. Pure hatred. "Might be?" He laughed. but there was no humor in it. There's no might about it, Colton. I've had those test results for 6 months. 6 months of knowing my wife fucked my brother and got pregnant. 6 months of looking at Owen and seeing your face staring back at me. 6 months of pretending everything was fine because I didn't know what else to do. Amy stepped forward. Greg, please, we can work through this. We can go to counseling. Owen doesn't have to know anything. Greg spun toward her so fast she stumbled backward. Owen doesn't have to know? You want to keep lying? For how long, Amy? Another 4 years? Another 20? When were you planning to tell the truth? Were you ever going to tell the truth? I didn't know for sure, Amy said. Her voice was barely audible. I hoped it was yours. I prayed it was yours. But you knew it might not be, Greg said. You knew the whole time. Every time I held him in the hospital. Every time I got up at 3 a.m. for his feedings. Every time I changed his diapers and sang him to sleep and read him bedtime stories. You knew there was a chance he wasn't mine, and you said nothing. I thought about getting an abortion, Amy whispered. Back when I first found out I was pregnant. I was so scared. But then you were so happy. You kept talking about how you'd always wanted to be a dad and how this baby was going to change everything. I couldn't take that away from you. So instead you took 4 years, Greg said. 4 years of lies. 4 years of me thinking I had a family. 4 years of building a life with a woman who was never really mine. He turned back to me. And you, my own brother. How could you do this to me? I don't have a good answer for that, I said. I was drunk. She was crying. It just happened. I'm not trying to make excuses. There are no excuses for what I did. But I never planned it. I never wanted to hurt you. Greg shook his head slowly. You think that makes it better? You think the fact that it was an accident somehow makes it okay? You destroyed my entire life because you couldn't keep your dick in your pants for one night? He was right. There was nothing I could say to defend myself. I had done something unforgivable and now I had to face the consequences. What happens now? I asked. Greg looked at the manila envelope in his hand. Then he looked at Amy. Then at me. I've been thinking about that for 6 months, he said. Every day I'd wake up and look at Owen and think about what I should do. Some days I wanted to kill you both. Some days I wanted to pretend like nothing happened and just keep living the lie. Some days I wanted to pack a bag and disappear and never see either of you again. But here's the thing I kept coming back to. Owen, that little boy who calls me daddy, who runs to me when he's scared and wants me to pick him up when he's tired, who thinks I hung the moon and the stars. He didn't ask for any of this. He didn't choose to be born into this mess. Greg sat down heavily on my couch. He looked exhausted, defeated. I love that kid, he said. I know he's not mine biologically. I've known that for 6 months. But I'm still his dad. I'm the one who's been there every single day of his life. I'm the one who taught him to walk and talk and tie his shoes. Biology doesn't change that. So what are you saying? Amy asked. I'm saying I need time, Greg said. I can't just pretend this conversation didn't happen. I can't go back to playing happy family knowing what I know now. But I'm also not going to abandon Owen. That kid is innocent in all of this. He stood up and walked toward the door. Then he stopped and turned back to face me. You're going to stay away from him, he said. His voice had that dead quality again. You don't get to be his father. You don't get to have a relationship with him. You gave up that right when you slept with my wife and then kept it secret for 4 years. As far as Owen knows, I'm his dad. And that's how it's going to stay. Greg, I started. No, he cut me off. You don't get to argue about this. You don't get to make demands. You made your choice 4 years ago when you decided to fuck my girlfriend at my birthday party while I was passed out drunk. Now you live with the consequences. He opened the door. Amy, you and I are going to have a long conversation tonight about whether this marriage can survive, about what we tell Owen, about what our future looks like. But I'm not having that conversation in front of him. He jerked his head toward me. Then he walked out and slammed the door behind him. Amy and I stood in silence for a long moment. The air felt thick and heavy. I should go, she finally said. Yeah, I replied. You should. She walked toward the door, then paused with her hand on the knob. For what it's worth, she said without turning around. I really did hope he was Greg's. Every single day for 4 years, I prayed that I was wrong about the timing, that somehow the math didn't add up, that Owen really was his. But he wasn't, I said. No, she whispered. He wasn't. Then she was gone. I stood alone in my apartment staring at the closed door. My phone buzzed. A text from my mom asking if I was coming to Sunday dinner this week. I turned the phone off without answering. That night I didn't sleep. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every possible scenario in my head, every possible outcome, every possible future. None of them looked good. Update 1. 3 weeks later. I've been going back and forth about whether to post this update. Part of me wanted to just disappear and never talk about this situation again. But I've gotten so many messages asking what happened, and honestly, writing this stuff out helps me process it. So here's where things stand. Greg and Amy are separated. He moved out of their house 2 weeks ago and is staying in a motel about 20 minutes outside of town. One of those extended stay places with the little kitchenettes. I know this because our mom called me freaking out when she found out. She showed up at my apartment 3 days after everything went down, pounding on my door at 7 a.m. demanding to know what was going on with Greg. She said he'd called her to say he was leaving Amy but wouldn't explain why. She said Amy wouldn't return her calls. She said the whole family was worried and nobody could get any answers. I let her in and made her coffee. Then I told her everything. The look on her face as I explained what happened. I'll never forget it. She went through about 6 different emotions in 30 seconds. Shock, confusion, disbelief, anger, disgust, and finally, this horrible crushing disappointment that hurt worse than anything else. "How could you do this?" she asked. Her voice cracked. "Greg is your brother. Your only brother." "I know," I said. "I don't have an excuse. I made a terrible mistake and now everyone is paying for it." She didn't yell at me. That almost made it worse. She just sat there in my kitchen shaking her head slowly, like she was trying to process information that didn't fit into any category her brain could handle. "I need to see Owen," she finally said. "I need to make sure he's okay." "He's with Amy," I told her. "Greg said he's going to file for joint custody, but for now, Owen is staying in the house with his mom." His mom. She said the word like it was poison. Amy isn't fit to be anyone's mother. What kind of woman sleeps with her boyfriend's brother and then passes the baby off as his? I didn't have an answer for that. My mom left without hugging me goodbye. That hurt more than I expected. She's always been the hugger in our family. Never lets anyone leave without squeezing them tight and telling them she loves them. But that morning she just looked at me with those disappointed eyes, shook her head one more time, and walked out. We haven't spoken since. Greg hasn't spoken to me either. I've tried calling him about a dozen times, but it goes straight to voicemail. I sent him a long text apologizing and asking if we could meet to talk. He never responded. Amy texted me once, last week. Just 2 sentences. Owen keeps asking where Daddy is. I don't know what to tell him. I didn't respond. What could I possibly say? The worst part is seeing Owen's face every time I close my eyes. That red hair, those green eyes, that crooked smile that mirrors mine exactly. He's 4 years old and his whole world is falling apart because of something I did before he was even born. I thought about reaching out to Greg one more time, showing up at his motel, forcing him to talk to me. But then I remembered what he said that night in my apartment. "You're going to stay away from him. You gave up that right when you slept with my wife." And he's right. I don't have any right to be in Owen's life. I'm not his father in any way that matters. I'm just the guy who provided half his DNA. Greg is the one who raised him. Greg is the one who was there every single day. Greg is the one Owen calls Daddy. Biology doesn't make you a parent. Being there does. And I wasn't there. I was too busy pretending the whole thing never happened. Work has been rough, too. I can't concentrate on anything. I keep making stupid mistakes that I never would have made before. My boss pulled me aside yesterday and asked if everything was okay. I told him I was dealing with some family stuff. He nodded sympathetically and told me to take whatever time I needed. I might take him up on that. I've started seeing a therapist. First session was last Tuesday. I sat in this beige office with inspirational posters on the walls and tried to explain how I'd destroyed my brother's marriage and possibly ruined a child's life. The therapist listened without judgment. She asked good questions. She helped me understand that while I couldn't change what I'd done, I could work on becoming a better person going forward. It sounds like empty self-help bullshit when I type it out like that, but in the moment, it helped. She gave me homework. Write down 3 things I'm grateful for every day. Meditate for 10 minutes each morning. Avoid alcohol completely, since that's what led to this whole mess in the first place. I've been following the program for what it's worth. The family group chat has been silent since my mom found out. Usually it's buzzing constantly with random updates and pictures and inside jokes. Now it's dead. I assume everyone knows. I assume everyone hates me. I probably deserve that. I'll update again when there's more to report. For now, I'm just trying to take things one day at a time and not completely fall apart. It's been 2 more weeks. Things have gotten worse. Greg filed for divorce. I found out through my mom, who finally broke her silence to call me with the news. She said Greg had contacted a lawyer and started the process. She said Amy was fighting him on custody, but Greg was determined to get at least 50-50 time with Owen. She said he was also requesting a legal paternity test. My blood went cold when she told me that. What does that mean? I asked. For me, I mean. Legally. My mom was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, if the test confirms you're the biological father, you could potentially have legal rights to Owen, visitation, maybe even partial custody. Amy could petition for child support. I hadn't even thought about that. I don't want custody, I said. I don't want to take Owen away from Greg. That might not be your choice, my mom replied. Courts have rules about these things. Biological fathers have rights whether they want them or not. After we hung up, I spent 3 hours Googling paternity laws in our state. The information I found was confusing and contradictory. Some sources said biological fathers can voluntarily terminate their parental rights. Others said courts are reluctant to allow that because it's not in the child's best interest. Others said it depends on whether the biological father was aware of the child's existence from birth. I called a lawyer the next morning. Not for me specifically. I just needed information. I needed to understand what I was potentially facing. The lawyer confirmed what I'd read online. If Greg requested a paternity test and it came back showing I was Owen's biological father, I would have legal rights to the child, but I would also have legal responsibilities. Amy could pursue me for child support going back to Owen's birth. 4 years of unpaid support plus interest. We're talking potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars, the lawyer said. And that's before we even get into the custody questions. I don't want custody, I repeated. I just want Greg to be able to raise Owen without me interfering. The lawyer sighed. What you want and what the law allows aren't always the same thing, she said. You need to prepare yourself for the possibility that this could get very complicated. I thanked her and hung up. That night, I made a decision. I drove to Greg's motel. It was dark when I got there. His truck was parked outside room 147. The light was on inside. I could see the blue flicker of a TV through the thin curtains. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, working up the courage to knock. Finally, I got out and walked to his door. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I raised my hand and knocked 3 times. The TV sound cut off. Footsteps. The door opened a crack. Greg's face appeared. He looked terrible. Unshaved. Dark circles under his eyes. His hair was greasy and uncombed. What do you want? He asked flatly. To talk, I said. Please. 5 minutes. Then I'll leave and never bother you again if that's what you want. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he opened the door wider and stepped aside. The room was small and depressing. A double bed with faded floral sheets. A mini fridge humming in the corner. A microwave on top of a particle board dresser. Empty beer cans scattered across every surface. Greg saw me looking at the cans. Judge me all you want, he said. At least I didn't fuck my brother's girlfriend. Fair point, I said. He sat on the edge of the bed. I stayed standing. Say what you came to say, he said. Then get out. I took a deep breath. I talked to a lawyer, I started. About the paternity situation. Greg's expression darkened. Of course you did. Looking to get your piece of Owen? Decide you want to play daddy after all? No, I said quickly. The opposite. I wanted to know how to make sure you can stay his father, legally, without me in the picture. Greg went still. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. What did the lawyer say? He asked finally. She said it's complicated, I admitted. She said if the paternity test confirms I'm the biological father, I'll have legal rights and responsibilities. Amy could come after me for child support. I could be forced into Owen's life whether I want to be there or not. And what do you want? Greg asked. His voice was hard. What does Colton want out of all this? I want Owen to grow up happy, I said, with a father who loves him. That's you, Greg, not me. You're his dad. You've always been his dad. A DNA test doesn't change that. Pretty words, Greg said. But what does that mean practically? I sat down in the room's only chair. It creaked under my weight. It means I'll sign whatever documents are necessary to give up my parental rights, I said. It means I won't fight for custody or visitation. It means I'll stay away from Owen like you asked. It means if Amy comes after me for child support, I'll pay it without complaint because that money will be going to my brother's son. Greg was quiet for a long time. You'd really do that? He finally asked. Give up all rights to your biological child? He's not my child, I said. Not in any way that matters. He's yours. He's always been yours. I was just a sperm donor. That's a hell of a way to describe what you did. I don't know how else to describe it. I made a terrible mistake one night, and the consequence was Owen. But you're the one who stepped up. You're the one who raised him. You're the one he loves. Greg rubbed his face with both hands. He looked exhausted. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, he said. What you did. What Amy did. It broke something in me that I don't think can be fixed. I understand, I said. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking for a chance to make things slightly less terrible for Owen. Greg looked at me for a long moment. I need time, he finally said, to think about all this, to figure out what I want. What's best for Owen? Take all the time you need, I said. I stood up. I'm not going anywhere. When you're ready to talk, call me. I walked toward the door. Then I stopped and turned back. For what it's worth, I said, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I'm genuinely, deeply sorry for what I did. Not just because I got caught, not just because of the consequences, but because I betrayed the person I care about most in the world. My brother, my best friend. Greg didn't respond, but I thought I saw something shift in his expression, something that might have been the first tiny seed of understanding. I left the motel and drove home in silence. Update 2, 2 months later. I've been putting off writing this update because honestly, I didn't know how to explain what's happened. The situation has gotten so complicated that some days I don't even understand it myself. But I promised to keep everyone informed, so here goes. The paternity test came back. It confirmed what we all already knew. Owen is biologically my son. Seeing it in black and white on official legal documents was different than just knowing it in my gut. More real somehow. More permanent. This wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was a fact that would follow all of us for the rest of our lives. Greg called me the day after the results came in. First time we'd spoken since that night at the motel. I got the papers, he said. His voice was flat and emotionless. Yeah, I said. Me too. Long silence on the line. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Greg finally said. About Owen. About what's best for him. About what kind of father I want to be. And? I asked. And I realized something, he said. Owen didn't ask for any of this. He didn't choose his parents. He didn't choose to be born into this mess. But he's here now. And he deserves to grow up with people who love him and put his needs first. I agree, I said. So here's what I've decided, Greg continued. I'm going to stay in Owen's life. I'm going to fight for joint custody. I'm going to be his dad in every way that matters. But I'm also not going to pretend you don't exist. What does that mean? It means Owen is going to find out the truth eventually, Greg said. Kids always do. And when that day comes, I want him to know that the adults in his life handled it with maturity and honesty. Not lies and secrets. My throat tightened. Greg, are you saying? I'm saying, I think Owen should know you, Greg said. Not as his father. I'm his father. But as his uncle. His biological uncle, who's also his biological dad. It's complicated and messy and probably confusing as hell for a 4-year-old. But I'd rather him grow up with all the pieces of the puzzle than find out we lied to him later. I didn't know what to say. Of all the outcomes I'd imagined, this wasn't one of them. You'd actually let me be part of his life? I finally managed. With conditions, Greg said. Strict ones. You don't get to undermine me as his parent. You don't get to tell him you're his real dad or any bullshit like that. You're Uncle Colton. Period. If you can accept that role and only that role, then yes. I think having you in his life might actually be good for him. What about Amy? I asked. Amy and I are getting divorced, Greg said. That's not changing. But we've agreed to co-parent Owen as civilly as possible. She's agreed that you can have a relationship with him as long as it doesn't confuse him about who his real parents are. I sat down heavily on my couch. My legs felt weak. Why? I asked. After everything I did, why would you offer me this? Greg was quiet for a moment. Because I've spent the last 2 months being angry, he said. So fucking angry I couldn't see straight. I punched holes in the walls of that motel room. I drank myself stupid every night. I fantasized about driving to your apartment and beating you to a bloody pulp. But then I'd go visit Owen, he continued, and I'd see his face light up when I walked through the door. I'd hear him say daddy and run into my arms, and I'd realize that my anger was taking me away from him. Every minute I spent hating you was a minute I wasn't spending loving him. Greg paused. Owen deserves better than that, he said. He deserves a father who's present, who's not consumed by rage and bitterness. And if that means finding a way to coexist with you, then that's what I'm going to do. Not for you, for him. I felt tears streaming down my face. First time I'd cried since this whole thing started. Thank you, I whispered. I don't deserve this. But thank you. You're right, Greg said. You don't deserve it. But Owen does. So don't make me regret giving you this chance. I won't, I said. I promise. Greg hung up without saying goodbye. But that was okay. He'd said enough. The first time I saw Owen after the paternity test was 3 weeks later. Greg had arranged it carefully. We met at a park about halfway between my apartment and Amy's house. Neutral territory. Greg was there the whole time, watching from a bench about 20 feet away, close enough to intervene if something went wrong, far enough to give us space. Owen didn't remember me very well, which made sense. I'd been avoiding family gatherings for months. The last time he'd seen me was probably his 3rd birthday party, and I'd barely said 2 words to him there. "Who are you?" he asked when I walked up. "I'm your Uncle Colton," I said. "I'm your daddy's brother." Owen looked over at Greg on the bench. Greg nodded encouragingly. "Daddy said you've been away," Owen said. "Like on a trip." "Something like that," I replied. "But I'm back now, and I thought maybe we could play together, if you want." Owen considered this seriously. He had a way of scrunching up his nose when he was thinking that, reminded me of the same expression I'd seen in my own baby pictures. "Do you know how to play dinosaurs?" he finally asked. "I used to be pretty good at it," I said, "but I might be rusty. Maybe you could teach me." Owen's face broke into that crooked smile. My smile. Our smile. "Okay," he said. He grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the playground. "But you have to be the T-Rex because I'm always the Triceratops." I let him lead me across the grass. I looked back at Greg. He was watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not happy exactly, but not angry either. Something in between. Something like acceptance. For the next hour, I played dinosaurs with my biological son while my brother watched from a distance. It was awkward and strange, and nothing like I'd imagined fatherhood would be, but it was also kind of wonderful. Owen showed me how to roar properly. He explained the complex social hierarchy of the dinosaur world he'd invented. He told me about his best friend at preschool and his favorite TV show and the nightmare he'd had last week about a giant spider. He talked, and I listened to every word. When it was time to go, Owen hugged me goodbye. It was a quick, casual hug, the kind kids give without thinking about it. But it meant everything to me. "Will you come play again?" he asked. "If your daddy says it's okay," I replied. I looked at Greg. Greg nodded slightly. "We'll see," he said to Owen. "Uncle Colton is pretty busy, but maybe sometimes." Owen seemed satisfied with that answer. He ran over to Greg and grabbed his hand. "Bye, Uncle Colton," he called over his shoulder as they walked toward Greg's truck. "Bye, buddy," I called back. I stood in that park for a long time after they left, watching the empty playground, thinking about everything that had happened and everything that might still happen. I'd made a terrible mistake 4 years ago. I'd destroyed my brother's marriage. I'd created a child I had no right to and then hidden from the truth for years. But somehow, impossibly, things were working out. Not perfectly, not the way they should have, but better than I deserved. Greg and I weren't okay. We might never be okay. The trust between us was shattered and would take years to rebuild if it ever could be rebuilt at all. But we had Owen, this little red-haired boy who loved dinosaurs and had my crooked smile and Greg's laugh. This innocent kid who'd been caught in the middle of adult mistakes but somehow still managed to be happy and curious and full of wonder. He deserved the best we could give him, and I was determined to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the second chance my brother had given me. Update 3. 6 months later. I know I said I was done updating, but something happened last week that changed everything. Again, just when I thought things were finally settling into some kind of new normal. Greg remarried, not to Amy. The divorce was finalized 4 months ago. Amy moved to a different city for a job opportunity, about 3 hours away. She has Owen every other weekend and for part of the summer. The rest of the time, he lives with Greg. Greg met someone new. Her name is Wendy. She's a nurse at the hospital where Greg went for a minor surgery about 5 months back. They started talking, then dating, and apparently things got serious fast. I found out about the wedding through my mom. She called me 2 days before to say they were doing a small ceremony at the courthouse and I was invited. I almost didn't go. It felt weird being there, like I was intruding on something that should have been private. But Greg texted me that morning and asked me to come. Said Owen wanted his uncle there, so I went. It was a small ceremony, just immediate family, our parents, Wendy's sister, a couple friends, and Owen, standing next to Greg in a tiny suit that was too big for him, holding the rings on a pillow and looking extremely serious about his important job. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, I held my breath. Old habits. But nobody said anything. And then it was over. Greg and Wendy were married. Just like that. The reception was at a restaurant downtown. Nothing fancy. Just pizza and salad and a small cake. Owen ate 3 slices of pepperoni and got sauce all over his face. Greg kept looking at Wendy like he couldn't believe she was real. She kept looking back at him the same way. I sat at a table in the corner nursing a ginger ale. I'd given up alcohol completely after everything that happened. The therapist said it was a good idea. I agreed. Wendy came over to talk to me about halfway through the party. "You're Colton," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," I replied. Congratulations on the wedding. She sat down across from me. Greg told me everything, she said. About Owen, about what happened. I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry seemed inadequate. Thank you for not hating me seemed presumptuous. He also told me how you handled it, Wendy continued. How you offered to give up your parental rights. How you've respected his role as Owen's father. How you've been showing up as an uncle without trying to be anything more. I'm just trying to do the right thing, I said. For Owen. Wendy nodded. That's what Greg said. He said you've been really good about all of it. Better than he expected. I don't know about that, I said. I think I'm just trying to minimize the damage I caused. Wendy was quiet for a moment. She looked over at Greg, who was helping Owen cut his slice of cake into smaller pieces. Greg's a good man, she said. The best man I've ever known. What you and Amy did almost destroyed him, but he chose to rebuild instead of staying broken. He chose to forgive instead of staying angry. He chose to put Owen first even when it was the hardest thing in the world. I know, I said. I'm grateful for that every day. He chose to let you be part of Owen's life, Wendy continued. That took courage. And trust. Trust that you would honor the boundaries he set. She looked at me directly. I just want you to know that I support that decision, she said. Owen talks about his Uncle Colton all the time. How you play dinosaurs together. How you taught him to throw a football. How you're always there at his birthday parties and school plays. I felt a lump forming in my throat. That means a lot, I managed to say. But I also want you to know that if you ever do anything to hurt that little boy or undermine Greg's position as his father, I will end you. Wendy's voice was calm, but her eyes were hard. I've seen what Greg went through. I'm not going to let anyone put him through that again. I understand, I said. You have my word. Owen's well-being comes first. Always. Wendy studied my face for a long moment. Then she nodded, apparently satisfied with what she saw. Good, she said. Then I think we're going to get along fine. She stood up and offered me her hand. I shook it. Welcome to the family, Wendy said. Then she walked back over to Greg and Owen, leaving me alone with my ginger ale and my thoughts. Owen is 5 now. He started kindergarten last month. I was there for his first day of school, standing on the sidewalk with Greg and Wendy, watching him walk through those big front doors with his Spider-Man backpack bouncing against his shoulders. He turned around to wave at us before he went inside. That crooked smile, those green eyes, my smile, but Greg's son. I waved back. Then Owen disappeared into the building and we all stood there for a moment, this strange little family unit that had formed out of the wreckage of terrible decisions. Greg put his arm around Wendy's waist. She leaned into him. He's going to do great, she said. Yeah, Greg agreed. He looked at me. You want to grab breakfast? There's a diner around the corner. I blinked. Greg and I had been civil, even friendly at times, but he'd never invited me anywhere, just the two of us. Not since everything happened. Sure, I said. Breakfast sounds good. Wendy begged off, said she had a shift at the hospital. So it was just me and Greg at the diner, sitting across from each other in a vinyl booth, ordering eggs and coffee like it was the most normal thing in the world. Thanks for being here today, Greg said. I know Owen appreciated it. I wouldn't have missed it, I replied. Greg nodded. He stirred his coffee slowly. I've been thinking a lot lately, he said, about the past year and a half, about everything that happened, about how I handled it. You handled it better than anyone could have expected, I said. Better than I deserved. Maybe, Greg said. But I also think I was too hard on you at first. That night at your apartment when Amy told me the truth. I said some things that were cruel. They were true, I said. True isn't the same as necessary. Greg set down his spoon. You made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But you were 26 years old, drunk, and dealing with a woman who made a choice to betray me just as much as you did. I'm not saying you're blameless, but I've spent a lot of time in therapy working through my anger, and I've realized that some of it was misdirected. What do you mean? I mean, I was so focused on hating you that I didn't deal with my real feelings, Greg said. About Amy, about our marriage, about all the signs I ignored because I didn't want to see them. He looked out the window at the passing traffic. Amy and I had problems before that night, he continued. We were already drifting apart. I was drinking too much. She felt neglected. None of that excuses what you two did. But its context I didn't want to acknowledge because it was easier to make you the villain. I don't know what to say, I admitted. You don't have to say anything, Greg said. I just wanted you to know that I don't hate you anymore. I'm not sure I'll ever be able to forget what happened. It's always going to be there, this thing between us. But I'm done letting it define our relationship. The waitress brought our eggs. We ate in silence for a few minutes. So where does this leave us? I finally asked. Greg shrugged. Brothers, I guess, with a lot of baggage, but still brothers. I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot that had been there for almost 2 years. "I'd like that," I said. "Good," Greg replied, "because Owen needs his uncle, and I don't want to spend the rest of my life avoiding family dinners." I laughed. It felt strange. I hadn't laughed genuinely in a long time. "Mom's going to be thrilled," I said. "She's been trying to get us in the same room for months." "I know," Greg said. "She calls me every week to give me updates on you, like she's trying to broker a peace treaty through motherly espionage." "That sounds like her," I said. We finished our breakfast and split the check. Outside the diner, we stood awkwardly for a moment. Neither of us was really the hugging type. "Take care of yourself," Greg finally said. He clapped me on the shoulder. "I'll text you about Sunday dinner at Mom's. She's making her lasagna. Wouldn't miss it," I said. Greg walked toward his truck. I headed for my car. Then I stopped and turned around. "Hey, Greg!" I called out. He turned. "Yeah? Thank you," I said. "For everything. For Owen. For giving me another chance. For being the kind of man who could have destroyed me but chose to show grace instead." Greg looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Just don't make me regret it," he said. And then he got in his truck and drove away. It's been 2 years since that first night when everything fell apart. 2 years of rebuilding. 2 years of therapy and hard conversations and learning to live with the consequences of my actions. Owen is 6 now. He's in 1st grade. He can read simple books and count to 100 and do basic math. He still loves dinosaurs, but now he's also into superheroes and video games and whatever cartoon is popular with kids his age. He knows I'm his biological father. We told him last year, when Wendy got pregnant and Owen started asking questions about where babies come from. Greg and Wendy sat him down and explained, in age-appropriate terms, that sometimes families are complicated, that Owen has a daddy who loves him and takes care of him every day, and he also has an uncle who's connected to him in a special way. Owen took it surprisingly well. Kids are resilient like that. He asked a few questions. "Does this mean I have 2 dads?" he wanted to know. "You have 1 dad," Greg told him. "That's me. Uncle Colton is your uncle. He's just also the reason you have red hair." Owen considered this. Then he shrugged and asked if he could have ice cream. We got him ice cream. These days I see Owen at least once a week. I go to his soccer games and school plays. I help him with his homework when Greg and Wendy are busy with the new baby. His little sister Emma, who has brown hair like Greg and will never have to deal with the complicated questions Owen might face someday.